Tonight, on 600 Seconds, we have fresh new reporter Swayze E Swayzy giving us insight on the current condition of several American food industries. We've known that some corporations have been shady in the past, but have they really gotten any better? Let's let Swayze answer that question tonight on 600 Seconds.
The condition in which our food is delivered to us has been an important issue in this country for years. Starting primarily with the expose by Upton Sinclair, The Jungle, about the Chicago meatpacking industry, public awareness of this issue grew steadily. This led, of course, to cleaner business practices and more regulations. Or at least that's what we'd like to think. The current state of the food industry can be a lot more shocking.
To help me uncover the less than savory aspects of the business, I talked to those who know it best, the workers. Butch Baxter is a butcher at a local, family-run slaughterhouse.
So Butch, you've been in the meatpacking industry for...
My whole life, yep.
And you say that you've seen a change over the years.
Well, it's more of a change from my pop's generation, but I've seen it too. It used to be that you just chop what was ever put in front of you. It was none of my business to know what I was chopping. Just put it in front of me and I'd chop. Now I'm cutting USDA beef, pork, chicken. I always know what I'm chopping now.
And this is everywhere?
Oh, not everywhere.
Not everywhere.
No, I got a couple buddies not so lucky to have their own business. They working in their factories chopping like my old man used to do it. Hell, last week, my friend Jimmy, he wasn't even so sure what he was chopping was even meat.
And that's how big business operates in the meatpacking industry, operating more like workers on an assembly line than like traditional butchers. Because very few companies control the vast majority of meat distribution, it allows them to lower quality standards for their meat as well as treat their workers to a poor standard.
I know a lot of good men that went and chopped themselves insane.
While meatpacking has come a long way since the early 1900s, it remains one of the most dangerous professions in America. Sadly, this kind of mistreatment isn't contained strictly to the meatpacking industry, and is often much worse outside of the United States, chiefly shown by the chocolate industry.
I'm sorry, right before we got started, I don't believe I caught your name. What is that?
That's not important.
Okay, well, could you at least bring us up to speed with what you've been going through?
I made my way to the cacao-rich region of the Ivory Coast in my early 20s.
And what made you take that leap?
The cacao.
And you're the first in your family to enter this field, or is there a history?
Oh yeah, I'm the very first.
Now, what event would you point to say, this is why you wanted to enter this field?
Well, growing up in Hershey, Pennsylvania, I was enveloped in the cacao from a very young age. And one day, around the age 10, I believe, I discovered that the cacao grew on trees. And ever since then, I dedicated myself to the cacao.
Okay, so you go to the Ivory Coast to search for this cocoa bean, and what happens then?
Well, I went there, and I realized they had no place for me.
The children, you mean?
If I wanted to guarantee myself a job, climbing trees, picking cacao, I would have had to beat the wages they were willing to pay the youngins of the Ivory Coast.
And could you give us a ballpark estimate for, about what your salary would be?
Well, essentially, I'd have to pay them.
The children who harvest cocoa in Western Africa are often paid very poorly, if at all, and are treated terribly relative to the level of safety one would expect for children as young as 8.
Can you give us some of the things that you saw over in Africa, some of the images?
I'll tell you what I didn't see. I did not see the joy of the cacao. Most of the kids there never even tasted the yield of the cacao bean. No, they didn't deserve that. The cacao didn't deserve it. I tell you what, I'm gonna do something about it.
The cocoa industry, in its current state, shows all the horrors of unregulated labor, and at worst is the face of modern-day slavery. This disregard for the life of others, while shocking, is seemingly not uncommon in food industries nowadays. While the children have become vital to the cocoa harvesting, they are by no means necessary. However, the dairy industry rests upon the labor of workers it can't possibly do without: cows. Livestock-based farming has a very well-documented history of mistreatment, and to illustrate this, we turn to an inside man to get a look at how dairy farms are run. You may know him as Milky Mitch, who released his new hit record just a few months ago, but for years he was just Milky, a dairy farm worker who was forced out of a job.
And Milky, how long have you been in the business for?
7 years. I started back in '07, and sadly had to leave. The treatment of the cows was just awful.
All right, and I understand that you have a very special relationship with one of your cows.
Yeah, Miss Moo.
And where's Miss Moo now?
I arranged for her to be in a petting zoo. Nobody does her any harm. It's nice.
And the kids like her?
Yeah, I was like, well, they don't pet her much. She's a cow, but I'm sure she's happy.
Now, on a slightly more serious note, what made you leave the industry, specifically?
Well, like when my private dairy farm got absorbed, they decided they had to pump all the cows full of these hormones, for their regulations or whatever. But Miss Moo hates hormones.
And you also mentioned something about living quarters before?
Right. Yeah. They ported over about 6 more cows, had them all living in these tiny stalls. You can't cramp Miss Moo's style. We had to leave.
Even though many organizations claim to use RBGH-free cows, the adequacy of many cows' living conditions are not taken into account. Workers often mistreat the animals, and disease-ridden calves are a common occurrence.
You ever think about the cows that you couldn't save? The ones that you couldn't bring to the petting zoo?
Yeah, it haunts me, not being able to do anything for those cows. But if there's anything I've learned from all my experiences, it's that the dairy business means business. And there's nothing they won't do to get their dairy.
In the past, people mistakenly believed there was a decline of hormone usage in dairy cows, which brought the decline of corruption in the dairy industry. However, the heinous mistreatment of our livestock proves otherwise. For all of the varying levels of progress in each of these industries, looking to the future, only one thing is certain: the state of regulation in food is dependent on the outcry of you, the viewer.
So for as much positive change that the food industry has undergone, just as much remains negative. Whether it be due to cutting corners or due to negligence, the production of our food is not as pure and just as we would hope for it to be. Hopefully, we will always have people like Swayze E, Swayzy.
Processed.
To shed light on these stories. I'm Chimney Ruffalo, and this has been 600 Seconds.
Okay, now see, many people go for the low-hanging cow fruit, but it's my personal belief that the highest fruit is the highest quality. Now, what you're going to want to do is find a tree with a low-hanging branch, and you're going to want to get a good grip on it, get some footholds. That's how you make it work. All right. Here we go. Get some nice. So we got some good quality beans here. There's always danger. Always danger involved.
you see now. That's how you get some good cacao.